You're not from around here, are you? That's what Deputy Carter said, just seconds before slamming Tracy Monroe into the side of her own SUV.
No warrant. No warning.
Just suspicion wrapped in a badge and the illusion of power. 3 minutes later, her car was in flames, and a cardboard note read, "Stay in your lane." What they didn't know, Tracy wasn't just passing through. She was the FBI's South Central director. And what came next wasn't just karma, it was federal. This isn't a story about a bad cop. It's about a broken structure. As Frederick Douglass once said, power concedes nothing without a demand. And Tracy made that demand with the truth. If this story makes your blood boil or your heart swell, hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe in justice, in fire-tested truth, subscribe now, because this story isn't over, and neither are we. It was the kind of heat that made the air feel thick, like syrup clinging to your skin. Late July in Kansas had a way of pressing down on people, flattening sound, stretching time. At a dusty gas station, just off Highway 69, nothing moved except the slow-turning fan above the checkout window and the shimmer of exhaust rolling off parked cars. Tracy Monroe pulled up in her black Chevy Tahoe, the engine humming low as she eased into a pump. She was in her early 50s, dressed in worn jeans, a gray zip-up jacket and black aviator sunglasses. To anyone watching, she looked like just another tired woman traveling alone through rural America. She moved with quiet confidence, the kind that made people instinctively step aside without knowing why. She stepped out, stretched her back, and opened the fuel cap. As the gas pump clicked into place, she glanced across the lot. A rusted pickup truck sat idling with its windows down, country music barely audible through cheap speakers. No other cars, no witnesses. Then came the crunch of gravel. A white Dodge Charger, its sheriff's decals faded and peeling, pulled in fast. 2 deputies stepped out before the engine even stopped. Deputy Vince Carter and Deputy Ryan Hale, names Tracy would memorize later, but faces she clocked instantly. Buzz cuts, tactical vests, aggression coiled like a spring in every movement. License and registration, Carter barked before he even reached her. Tracy looked up. Calm. Afternoon, officers. Is there a reason for the stop? Hale narrowed his eyes. You're a long way from home. That plate says Louisiana. This isn't a tourist stop, ma'am. I'm passing through, just getting gas. Her voice was steady, polite, offering no openings. But Carter was already circling the SUV. Mind popping the back. Need to make sure you're not hauling anything illegal. I'm sorry, she said, keeping her tone even. Without probable cause, I'm not opening anything. Wrong answer. Carter's jaw tightened. He stepped forward, invading her space. You got an attitude, ma'am? I'm exercising my rights, she replied. That's not attitude. The tension snapped. Carter shoved her shoulder hard, slamming her against the SUV. Hale grabbed her wrist, twisting it behind her back. Tracy grunted, staggered, but didn't yell. She dropped to one knee as Carter barked. She's resisting, even though she hadn't moved except to catch herself. A teen cashier from the gas station, frozen behind the glass, raised his phone. The recording began. Open the vehicle, Hale ordered, yanking open the passenger door. He started rifling through her glove compartment, tossing receipts and a half-eaten protein bar onto the floor mat. Carter kicked at her foot, forcing her to sit on the pavement. You people think you can just pass through wherever you want, he muttered. Tracy looked up, dirt smudged on her cheek, but her expression didn't crack. Inside, her heart was pounding, but her training took over. She counted their movements, their angles, where the cruiser's dashcam was likely aimed. She didn't resist, not because she was weak, but because she knew exactly what was happening and what would happen next. Are you done? She asked quietly. Neither answered. Carter leaned into the SUV, still searching, while Hale kept a foot planted near her shin like he owned the ground beneath her. And then, suddenly, they were done. Carter grunted in frustration and stood. Hale stepped back. Don't let us see you around here again. They walked to their cruiser, slow, deliberate, not a care in the world. The moment they were out of earshot, Tracy exhaled. Her shin throbbed from the shove. Her wrist ached. But more than anything, it was the humiliation that lingered like heat rash. The teen came out from behind the glass, holding up his phone. "I got all of it," he said, voice shaking. "You want me to send it to you?" Tracy gave a small nod. "Send it to everyone." The gas pump clicked off behind her. She capped the tank, climbed back into her SUV, and closed the door. Her hands trembled as she pulled out her phone, not to dial 911, but to activate a secure FBI line buried in her contacts under the name Agency Storage. The call connected. "This is Monroe," she said, her voice steel now. "I've just been assaulted by 2 deputies in Montgomery County. I want body cam access, dash footage, prior complaints, everything on them and their supervisor. Starting now." On the other end, the reply was swift. "Copy that." She hung up and stared out the windshield. They had no idea who she was. But they were about to find out. The video hit Twitter like a spark to dry brush. Within an hour of the gas station incident, it had been retweeted over 2,000 times. By nightfall, it was everywhere. Facebook, Reddit, TikTok. The footage showed 2 white deputies clearly visible, clearly aggressive, shoving a black woman to the ground and tearing through her SUV without a warrant or explanation. They didn't know who she was, but the internet was about to find out. Tracy Monroe sat on the edge of a motel bed, 30 miles outside of town. The room smelled like mildew and burnt coffee, but it was quiet, safe. She hadn't gone home. She needed time, distance. She'd iced her wrist with a half-melted bag of frozen peas and cleaned the dirt off her cheek. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Reporters were calling. Anonymous texts. A few friends from D.C. already knew. But she didn't respond. Not yet. Instead, she called Marcus Langford. He answered, on the first ring. "Already saw it," he said. "It's bad." "It's just the start," Tracy replied, calm but tight. "I want everything on those 2. Personnel files, body cam footage, prior complaints." "And the sheriff?" "Already digging," Marcus said. And Tracy, "I'm not backing down." A pause. "I know." By midnight, the Bureau's internal systems had lit up like Christmas. Tracy didn't need to flash her badge to move the machine. She was the machine. As regional director of the FBI's South Central Division, she'd built her career on exposing corruption, cartels, and federal-level cover-ups. But this was different. This was personal. At 2:37 a.m., Marcus texted a screenshot. 4 prior complaints against Deputy Vince Carter. 2 against Ryan Hale. All closed without investigation. The sheriff, Eleanor Kellerman, had signed off on every dismissal. No IA involvement. No oversight. Just rubber stamps and buried reports. The next morning, Tracy sat in a booth at a rundown diner off I-70. She ordered black coffee and bacon, ignored the sideways glances from the other patrons, and spread the printouts across the ladle like playing cards. Patterns formed fast. Repeat offenders. No accountability. And beneath it all, a system that protected itself. The climax came fast. By noon, a national news network had picked up the video. The headline was brutal. Black woman assaulted by deputies. No charges filed. They didn't say her name yet. But when a civil rights attorney from Atlanta tweeted the clip with the caption, "She's somebody, just wait," everything shifted. Tracy's phone rang again. "Marcus, you need to see this," he said. He sent a file. An internal memo leaked from someone inside the sheriff's department. 6 months old. A recommendation to place Deputy Carter on temporary leave due to escalating force complaints. Sheriff Kellerman had denied it. No follow-up. The memo had never been logged into the official system. It was the nail in the coffin and the opening of a much larger door. Tracy left the diner without finishing her coffee. She stepped outside into the harsh July sun, pulled out her backup phone and made another secure call. "I want an audit on Sheriff Kellerman's department," she told the Bureau's legal division. Contracts, donations, internal investigations, and her election finances. I want it all cross-checked against complaints filed in the last 10 years. Understood. She hung up and stared out over the parking lot. Heart steady, breath controlled. She wasn't here to get even. She was here to expose the whole damn system. By the afternoon, protests had started to form. First in Kansas City, then in Wichita. Activists held signs with her image. Frozen in the moment, Carter shoved her, the words, "No more silence," printed below. Meanwhile, Tracy drove to an old FBI field office in Jefferson County. There, in a dark conference room, she and Marcus reviewed surveillance footage, donor records, redacted reports, and something far more dangerous: connections. Sheriff Kellerman had been receiving steady campaign donations from 3 local businesses, 2 of which held long-standing contracts with the sheriff's office: food services, vehicle procurement, and 1 private security firm that also employed former deputies with misconduct records. The resolution was quiet, but certain. At 7:42 p.m., Tracy opened a file on her laptop and titled it Kellerman Network, Phase 1. She began mapping out every name, every tie, every buried lead. This wasn't about Carter and Hale anymore. They were just the smoke. Now she was hunting the fire. The SUV was fully engulfed by the time Tracy Monroe stepped outside. Flames licked the Kansas night sky, twisting upward from under the hood in wild orange arcs. Heat hit her face like a furnace door swinging open. She could already smell the gasoline in the air, too clean, too intentional. The fire wasn't random. It was a message. She stood barefoot on the pavement, phone still pressed to her ear. "Marcus," she said, her voice low and sharp. "They firebombed my vehicle." "I'm on my way," he replied instantly. Behind her, someone had scrawled 3 words on a piece of cardboard and wedged it under a nearby car's wiper blade. "Stay in your lane." Tracy didn't flinch. By the time Marcus arrived, hazard lights flashing, fire extinguisher in hand, the SUV was half ash. He sprayed until the flames choked and died, white foam hissing across the pavement. Then he turned to her, chest heaving. "They're scared," he said. She nodded. "Good." The next morning, Tracy filed a federal intimidation complaint. She sent the fire marshal's report, a sample of the accelerant residue, and photos of the note straight to DOJ's Internal Threats Division. Then, before she even finished her coffee, another file arrived in her encrypted inbox. This one from a whistleblower inside the sheriff's department. It was the body cam footage. Uncut, unedited, and damning. Tracy watched it from start to finish. The angle was shaky but clear. Carter's voice laughing as she hit the ground. Hale rifling through her SUV without a word. And worst of all, the racial slur Carter muttered under his breath when he thought the mic was off. It was over. Or it should have been. But that afternoon, Sheriff Kellerman posted a tone-deaf statement on Facebook. No mention of Tracy, no names, just vague concern and promises to review procedures. Tracy didn't respond. She didn't have to. By nightfall, the protests had spread to 4 cities. Civil rights attorneys went on national TV, demanding action. Hashtags flooded the internet. The clip from the body cam was now synced with the teen's original footage. A perfect, horrifying timeline. That's when Marcus called again. "They're digging into you," he said. "Hard. Word is someone in DC leaked a report. They're trying to paint you as unstable, maybe even suggest you staged the whole thing." Tracy's jaw tightened. Let them. But 2 hours later, it hit harder than expected. An official notice popped into her secure FBI portal. Administrative suspension. Effective immediately. No hearing. No conversation. Just a signature and silence. She closed her laptop and sat still for a long moment. The room felt quieter than it should. She wasn't defeated. Not even close. She was ready to go louder. She called Marcus back. "It's time." "You sure?" "Yes." Full release. Footage. Emails. The whole chain. They sent everything to a trusted investigative journalist. No embellishments. Just facts, dates, clips, records. By midnight, the story was front-page news. FBI official suspended after exposing deputy misconduct. The public response was instant and seismic. Civil rights groups issued statements. 2 senators tweeted support. The DOJ was flooded with calls. But that night, someone kicked in the door of Tracy's temporary apartment. Drawers tossed, mattress slashed, laptop smashed. They left one thing behind, a photo of her nephew, shredded in half, and placed on the bed. Tracy didn't cry. She didn't shout. She grabbed her backup phone and dialed. "They just made it personal. We've got options," Marcus said. "No," she said. "We've got a trap." The next morning, she said it, a rumor planted through secure channels, a fake drop of intel suggesting she'd be delivering incriminating documents to a federal courthouse west of town. She waited in the abandoned building, laptop bag filled with decoy files. Marcus monitored from across the street. At 4:37 p.m., 2 unmarked SUVs arrived. 3 men entered through the side door, guns holstered, but drawn in posture. They didn't know they were being recorded. Tracy stood still at the end of the hallway, arms crossed, looking for something. The biggest of the 3 stepped forward, sneering. "You think this little show's gonna scare us?" That's when the front doors burst open. 2 federal agents stormed in, weapons drawn. "FBI, hands where we can see them." The men froze, cuffed, hauled out, no words. Tracy stepped forward, still calm. "You brought the fight to me. Now you answer for it." She uploaded the footage to the same journalist. No names, just sound, shadows, and one voice saying, "She's done." It went viral in minutes. By morning, the DOJ had launched a formal investigation into the Benton County Sheriff's Department. And Tracy? She poured herself a second cup of coffee, reopened her laptop, and began a new file. Chain of command. Because she knew Carter and Hale weren't the top, they were just the teeth. Now, she was hunting the brain. The sun was just beginning to rise over Jefferson City when Tracy Monroe stepped onto the courthouse steps. A crowd was already waiting. Reporters with cameras, activists holding signs, locals who had driven in from across the state. The video of her takedown had gone national. The trap she'd set for the sheriff's men had gone viral. And the suspension handed down by the Bureau had only made her more dangerous in the eyes of the system that tried to silence her. She didn't bring security. She didn't need backup. She walked tall, her badge clipped openly to her belt again. Reinstated just hours before. Every step sent a pulse of pain through her healing knee. But she didn't limp. Not today. At the podium she paused. The noise faded. "My name is Tracy Monroe," she said clearly, her voice steady. "I am the FBI Regional Director for the South Central Division. I've served this country for 28 years. I've investigated organized crime, dismantled trafficking rings, and held corrupt officials accountable. But I have never until now been assaulted, silenced and targeted by the very system I swore to defend." Murmurs rolled through the crowd like wind through dry leaves. "Last week I was shoved, kicked, and humiliated by 2 deputies who didn't know who I was. They saw a black woman driving a black SUV and assumed I was a threat. They didn't ask questions. They acted on bias. And when they found out the truth, they tried to cover it up." She let that settle before continuing. "But this is not just about me. This is about a sheriff's department that protected them, a chain of power that enabled them, and a state senator who bankrolled it all." The name landed like thunder. Senator Richard Langston. A gasp rippled across the steps. Tracy didn't flinch. "We have evidence of financial connections between Langston and Sheriff Kellerman, campaign donations, contract kickbacks, and political pressure used to shut down misconduct investigations. This is not a rogue cop story. This is a rigged system." Reporters raised their hands. Microphones pushed forward. Questions flew. She answered none of them. She had said what she came to say. She turned and walked back down the steps, the crowd parting around her like water. Inside her SUV, Marcus was waiting. "You just lit the match," he said. Tracy shook her head. "I was the match." That night, they moved again, this time to a secure cabin tucked deep in the Ozarks. No phones, no surveillance, just time to plan. There, Tracy reviewed the next round of evidence. An anonymous source, someone inside Langston's office, had leaked a transcript of a private call. Langston's voice was clear, unmistakable, discussing how to tighten the leaks and handle Monroe before she spreads. Climax came fast. Tracy and Marcus compiled the evidence into a sealed affidavit. Denise Hampton, a federal prosecutor Tracy trusted for over a decade, filed the paperwork. Within 48 hours, a federal audit was launched into every contract Langston's office had touched in the past 6 years. Langston canceled a public appearance and disappeared from public view. Sheriff Kellerman's lawyer issued a press release. No comment. Back in Jefferson City, news vans circled the courthouse like sharks, smelling blood. Tracy stayed silent, but her presence loomed large. The clip of her naming Langston played on a loop across every major network. Public opinion flipped. Protest signs changed from justice for Tracy to tear down the system. Then came the fallout. Kellerman was placed on administrative leave. Carter and Hale remained suspended. The DOJ officially named Tracy Monroe as a cooperating agent in a federal corruption probe. Falling action rippled across the state. Langston was tracked down in Colorado, hiding under a fake name at a private fishing resort. When the marshals arrived, he surrendered without a word. His arrest hit every front page in the country. Resolution came quietly. Tracy didn't hold a press conference. She didn't celebrate. She poured herself a glass of water, sat on the cabin's wooden steps, and watched the trees sway in the wind. She knew it wasn't over. Langston was powerful, but not the architect. There were still names left on the list. People who had stayed just out of frame. People who thought exposure stopped with one arrest. But Tracy Monroe was just getting started. The next morning, she opened a new file, codename Architect. The fight had entered its final phase. The Gulf air was sharp with salt when Tracy Monroe stepped out of the SUV. The house sat high on a coastal bluff, too clean to be old, too calculated to feel like home. Gray stone, black steel glass windows that stretched from floor to ceiling. No curtains, no warmth. Just power flaunted in architecture. She walked alone toward the front door, her badge no longer clipped to her belt, her name now whispered across Washington like a storm that wouldn't pass. Marcus stayed behind, parked on the shoulder 100 yards out, watching through a long-range scope. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. Inside the house stood Vincent Hargrove, late 60s, ex-military. A man who'd never held an elected office, but had influenced more legislation than most senators. He didn't work for the government. He worked around it. Private security magnate. Intelligence consultant. The kind of man people feared because no one could prove he existed on paper. Except Tracy had the proof. "You came," he said, smiling thinly, as he opened the door. "You tagged my badge," she replied. "You tracked me." He didn't deny it. "Temporary precaution," he said, pouring himself a drink. "You were becoming unpredictable." Tracy didn't sit. "You tried to silence me." "I tried to protect the country from chaos." "No," she said. "You tried to protect the system from truth." He looked at her, eyes sharp behind the calm. "This system keeps the lights on. It also blinds people," she shot back. Rising action surged in silence. Then she placed a flash drive on the table between them. "This is everything. Surveillance logs, financial records, the back-channel emails. If anything happens to me, if I disappear, get discredited. Hit this goes global. Every outlet, every platform. It's all timed and set to drop." Hargrove's smile vanished. The room grew heavy. "You'd burn it all down?" "I'm not bluffing." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then he stepped back. "This was never about you, Tracy. You were just a variable." "No," she said. "I was the variable you couldn't control." Climax landed with clarity. She turned and walked out. No threats, no final warning. Just the end of an illusion. Back in the SUV, Marcus started the engine. That the end? No, she said. That was the beginning. 2 days later, Tracy submitted her resignation from the FBI. It wasn't defeat, it was strategy. Free from official restraints, she released a 94-page report through a federal watchdog agency. It outlined the full arc, beginning with the assault at the gas station and ending with the federal arrest of a sitting state senator. The names, the money, the buried cases. It was all there. The fallout was instant. Public hearings were launched. Oversight committees formed. Emergency audits of law enforcement funding began in 3 states. Laws changed. Some real, some symbolic. But people were watching now. Protests turned to policy demands. A movement had formed. And Tracy? She didn't go quiet. She spoke on college campuses, civil rights panels, veteran leadership events. Her message was simple. Justice doesn't start with punishment. It starts with truth. Falling action rippled through headlines and interviews. A year later, she returned to that same gas station. The pavement had been repaved, the pumps replaced, the graffiti scrubbed clean. But near pump 3, where she'd been shoved to the ground, someone had placed a small bronze plaque. Here stood a woman who refused to fall. Tracy stood there for a long time. No press, no speeches, just silence, just memory. She reached down, touched the plaque with 2 fingers, and whispered, "Still standing." Resolution came not with applause, but with understanding. Because the work never really ended. Somewhere another sheriff like Kellerman was cutting corners. Another senator like Langston was laundering influence. Another deputy like Carter was gearing up for his shift, unchecked and unchallenged. But Tracy Monroe was no longer alone. She had sparked a reckoning, not a flame, but a fuse still burning, still moving, one system at a time, and she wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, and Tracy Monroe's story proves it still rings true today. A single moment of cruelty at a gas station burst in a web of corruption, lies, and silence that had poisoned an entire system. The lesson? Courage isn't about shouting the loudest. It's about standing firm when everything in you wants to run. It's about using truth not as a weapon, but as a light. And sometimes the most powerful revolution starts, not in a courtroom, but with a quiet refusal to stay down. If this story stirred something in you, anger, hope, fire, don't let it fade. Drop a comment and share what part hit you the hardest. Hit that like button if Tracy's stand reminded you of someone strong in your life. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, subscribe. You're not just joining a channel. You're joining a movement.